This is a 2021 Lexus LC500 Convertible, and it's just cool. It looks good outside, it looks good inside, and it has a naturally aspirated V8 with 470 horsepower. This car has just one fatal flaw. Nobody is going to buy it. Today, I'm going to review the LC Convertible and explain what I mean. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my new online enthusiast car auction site aimed at modern enthusiast cars. If you're looking to sell a cool car from the 80s, 90s, and up, list it on Cars and Bids. We have great action and you will get the most money for your car. If you're looking to buy something cool from that era, check out Cars and Bids. We have live auctions of cool cars happening every day, all the time, and it's very enjoyable. Check out Cars and Bids at carsandbids.com. First, a little overview. Now, Lexus has dabbled in two-door cars pretty much since it first existed. There was the SC300 and 400, which found some success. Then there was the SC430, which found some success among the elderly. Then there were a few others, and then there was the LC, which came out for the 2018 model year, intended to be the new flagship Lexus, with a focus on sharp design and excitement. This was to be the car that showed the world that Lexus wasn't just for old people anymore. The problem is the LC Coupe has a starting price of around $94,000, and I gotta tell you, a big two-door luxury coupe with $100 grand sticker price isn't exactly going to be the first choice of young families or early career 20-somethings. So the LC has also been a car for old people. And frankly, not even too many of them, because old people are also choosing SUVs more and more, just like everybody else, for easier entry and exit and perceived better safety and capability. All of today's big two-door luxury cars are sales failures. The Mercedes S-Class Coupe, the BMW 8 Series, frankly, that segment is just dead. So dead, in fact, that Lexus has reportedly canceled a high-performance F version of the LC. There just isn't demand. But before this segment dies completely, Lexus is taking one last shot: a convertible. Pricing hasn't yet been announced, but I expect it'll start around $100,000. It has the same naturally aspirated V8 as the coupe with 470 horsepower, and it looks absolutely awesome inside and out. And today, I'm going to review it. First, I'm going to take you on a tour of the LC500 Convertible, and I'm going to show you all of its interesting quirks and features. Then I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'll give it a DougScore. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the LC500 Convertible with getting in, and that means we must start with the key, which is this kind of oddly shaped, we're really trying to make it look different and interesting sort of thing, but it does look different and interesting, and I actually kind of like it, so I guess they've succeeded. Now, as for getting in, when you approach the car, you might be a little confused because the door handle is flush up against the body, so what exactly do you do? Well, if the key is in your pocket, you press the front part of the door handle, and then you can see it unlocks the door handle pops out, and then you can just pull on it and open it right up and get inside the car. Pretty simple. Or you can walk up to the car, press the unlock button on the key itself, and the door handle will automatically pop out, so same thing, you can just grab it and open the door. Either way, I really like the fact that when the door handle pops out, it exposes this top part, which has a little hidden Lexus logo on it you don't see until the door is unlocked. That is a pretty cool quirk, a nice little hidden Easter egg. And by the way, when you get out of the car, to lock the doors, just press the back of the door handle, it locks the doors, and then the door handle goes back into the door, and you can walk away. Or of course, you can just press the lock button on the key fob, like basically every other car. And next up, you climb inside to the LC, and the first thing you notice when you get in here is This is a beautiful interior. You look around and, well, there's a lot of beige in here. This isn't necessarily the color that I would choose for my LC, but the materials are fantastic. The design is fantastic. No stupid, cheap-looking plastic in the wrong places. This is a truly beautiful, gorgeous automotive interior, one of the best I have ever been in at this price point. It is a fantastic place to be. Some highlights worth pointing out. One, I absolutely love these design lines on the door panel. Instead of your typical rectangles or perfectly crafted flowing lines, these look like they're almost randomly placed there, but beautiful. It makes the door panel kind of look like art. It's really cool. And I love the door handle on the inside too. Beautiful material, and it just looks like it's floating there in place. Again, a gorgeous look that complements this interior. I also just love the lines basically everywhere in this interior. This aluminum one on the door panel. There are all sorts of sculpted eye-catching character lines all throughout this interior, and they just look beautiful. Another thing I like in here is the aluminum trim everywhere. You can especially see it over on the dashboard and in the center control stack. This isn't cheap plastic, and it looks even classier than regular aluminum somehow, maybe because of the tint or the finish they've chosen, but it really is a gorgeous look. Again, complements everything else in this interior. I even love the design of the dashboard in this car, this kind of strange look over on the passenger side with this stair-step pattern and the clock next to it. Again, it kind of brings a little art into this interior. Everything just looks wonderful and a little daring in here, and I really like it. But beyond the interior quality and design, there are quite a few interesting quirks in here. I'm gonna start with the drive mode selector. It's not a little dial in the middle like basically every other car. Instead, it's on the side of the gauge cluster. You can see you push it up for sport mode, you push it down for comfort and eco mode. An odd positioning for it, but that's what they've done in this car. Now, a cool thing happens when you cycle through the drive modes in this car. Pay attention to the gauge cluster. You go into normal and the cluster looks normal, but you push it up for sport and you can see it gets redder and sportier. You push it up a second time for sport plus and it gets even sportier still with this white face looking like a true performance car, and I like that configurability. Now, speaking of that drive mode dial, on the other side of the gauge cluster area, you have another dial. You pull this one down to go into snow mode, or you push it in to turn traction control off. So there's some driving controls in that rather unorthodox place. But undoubtedly the coolest thing in this gauge cluster area is the gauge cluster itself. All right, you're looking at it, the tachometer is right in the middle, pretty standard, but you press this little button on the steering wheel and look, the tachometer moves over to the side to allow room for a new screen to appear. You press the button again and the tachometer moves back over. And this isn't some digital gauge that's just moving. This is a physical tachometer moving in place, which is just about the coolest look I can imagine. I love it. And it's a really cool party trick. Imagine trying to impress your passenger. Check out what my gauge cluster can do. And next up, another interesting control in this car is in the center console. That would be the volume dial, this big silver button in the middle. You press it to turn on the radio or off, but the volume control is the dial around it, and it feels tremendously weighty. This is probably the heaviest volume dial I've ever felt, but it gives it this high quality feeling like you're adjusting the volume on a tremendously expensive home theater system, which I guess is kind of the point. That is a cool volume dial, which is something I never really thought I would say. And speaking of the center console area, another interesting quirk in here is the center console storage lid. To open it, you push this little latch in the front and then pull it back and it reveals a little storage area. Nothing unusual about that. The cool part is when you close it, you push the latch and then it automatically and softly closes right up for you, which is a nice luxurious look that I find to be rather quirky. And speaking of storage lids in here, even the glove box opener is beautiful. It's this little unlabeled aluminum button on the passenger side. You push it and it opens right up. No ugly plastic glove box latch in the Lexus LC. And next up, another quirky item in this car is the gear lever, which is rather perplexing the first time you use it. Obviously, it's in the middle. In order to put this car in gear, you move it to the left and then down, and then you're in drive. For reverse, it's to the left and up, and neutral is just to the left and hold it there, and that's the gear lever. If you want to go into manual mode, pull it down when you're in drive, and then you can shift yourself using the paddles, and to go into park, you just press the big P in the center, and then you're in park. It's actually pretty intuitive once you get the hang of it, but it's different from most other car gear levers. And next up, we have to show off an important party trick of this car, and that would be the convertible top. Now, to put the top up, you open up this little panel in the center console, and you can see two switches in here. The top is over on the left. You push it up, and then the top goes up. As you can see, it is a very nice and easy and relatively simple process, and when it finishes, well, quite simply, the top is in place like you'd expect from a convertible. If you want to put the top down, same deal, open up this panel, press the top switch down, and then you can see the convertible top goes down. Again, exactly like you'd expect. It is a very nice and quick and easy process with obviously no manual latching or anything like that in here. You wouldn't expect that at this price point. Now, also notable is the other switch in this little convertible top control area, which looks like a power window switch, and it is, except it controls all the windows at once. You want to put them all down, you just push this switch down and all the windows drop. You want to put the windows back up. Obviously, it's the opposite process. Just pull the switch the other way and all of the windows go back up so you can be in an enclosed cabin. I love cars that have a all windows up or down button, and this car does. And by the way, one other notable feature about the top, while it's going up or down, a little progress bar appears in the gauge cluster to let you know how far along the top is in its top process. I guess so you don't accidentally stop partway through, you can monitor the progress and see how it's going. Now, next up, all of the buttons and switches and controls I've shown you so far have been quirky, but ultimately good. That is, until you want to turn on your heated seat, because the process is absolutely mind-numbing. Okay, in your car, you just press a little button and your heated seat is on. Pretty simple. In this car, it's in the screen. So you have to go into menu and then navigate to climate and then go to seat/steering and then highlight the seat you want to turn on and then raise or lower the seat temperature. It's like a 6-step process that takes up the whole screen. So if you're navigating somewhere and you want to turn on your heated seat, well, you might miss your turn in the 3 minutes it takes you to get your heated seat on. Absolutely ridiculous. A button is always better. Please, Lexus. With that said, I will forgive a small portion of the great inconvenience of turning on the heated seats because this car has a cooled seat climate feature, and that would be a headrest heating system. Go into headrest in the screen, you can turn it on, and then warm air blows out from this hole onto your neck. So you can drive around with the top down on a cool night and not get too cold because warm air is blowing directly onto the back of your neck, which is a fantastic feeling. All convertibles should have this. I'm thrilled to see that the LC does. By the way, Lexus would answer my criticism about the difficulty in turning on the heated seats by reminding you that this car has a feature called Climate Concierge. Go into the Concierge button in the climate controls and you can just set a temperature. And then the car will use all available measures to maintain that temperature. So it will automatically turn on your heated or cooled seats, it will automatically turn on the climate control, and it will even automatically turn on your headrest warm air blowy thing, so you don't have to do any of that yourself. Lexus would say, who needs a heated seat button? The car will handle all of that for you. But anyway, speaking of the center screen situation, I am disappointed to report that this car uses Lexus's remote touch interface system, which is a disaster and a half. I have reviewed this system negatively in other Lexus models. The gist is you use this little pad in the center to scroll around on the screen, but it's very inexact. You're constantly overshooting what you're going to, and a touch screen would be about 78 times better than this. Frankly, a dial in the middle would be better than this. Frankly, 4,000 cryptically labeled buttons throughout the interior like the cockpit of a Boeing 747 would be better than this. It is by far the worst infotainment system in the car industry today, and I think it is the low point of the LC500. A shame that such a beautiful car is saddled with such a disappointing infotainment system. With that said, I'm happy to report, aside from the seat heating and cooling and the headrest heating, the rest of the climate controls are separate from the infotainment system. These little buttons in the center control stack, which feel wonderful to push. These are some of the most beautiful climate controls you'll see, and adjusting them requires no infotainment screen intervention whatsoever, which is a good thing. And next up, speaking of screens in this car, let's go back to the movable gauge cluster screen and move it over to the side so we can check out that screen over on the left. Now, this is a vehicle information screen. It shows G-forces, various other vehicle things. It also has a feature called sway warning. This monitors your drowsiness level when you're driving. If you start to sway within your lane, it will pop up a warning message there telling you, hey, maybe it's time to think about taking a break. And next up, speaking of that gauge cluster screen, there's a very cool graphic that plays when you start the car. Take a look. A lot of cars now have little movies that play when you turn them on, and I think this is one of my very favorite ones, very fitting of the pomp and circumstance of the LC500. And next up, we must climb into the back seat of the LC500. Now, accessing the back seat is pretty easy. There's a little latch on the side of the front seat. You just pull it, push the front seat forward, and it automatically goes forward and lets you in. And by the way, check out this cool Lexus logo on the backs of the front seats. I guess this is a nice little feature to make sure everybody knows this car is a Lexus when you park it with the top down in Palm Beach. Anyway, like I said, accessing the back seat is pretty easy, but actually getting back here is a bit of a different conversation. With the roof down, it's not so hard to climb in, but fitting in place is a whole different thing. You can see the seat won't even latch, let alone go back to where it belongs. And if you look in, you can tell there is no rear seat room in this car. These are some of the very smallest back seats I have ever seen in any new car. They really aren't even useful for children unless you have two adults willing to scoot their front seats way up, and so everybody is scrunched in here. This is effectively a two-seater with some storage in back. Now, that point is especially driven home when you look around back here and see the utter lack of anything. No climate vents back here, no heated seats back here, no power windows back here, nothing. You just have some seats, some seat belts for those very few times when you're actually going to use the back seats in this car. With that said, there are a few notable items back here. One is a speaker in between the back seats, an odd place to see it, but that's where it is, rather large, for an enhanced sound experience. Another unusual thing back here, the seat belts come out of the middle of the back seat, not over on the side like basically every other car, which is a little bit of an odd experience if you're trying to buckle up in back. Not that you will be. And finally, in the back seat area, you do have a wind blocker behind the back seats. Usually these are larger and removable, but this one is fixed in place and pretty small, but apparently it's functional enough to keep wind flowing over the car and make sure it doesn't mess up the hair too much of the people who are sitting inside. And next up, I want to move outside the LC and start by discussing its styling, which I absolutely love. I really, really love how this car looks. I have since it first came out as a coupe a few years ago. I think it's fantastic. These sharp lines and creases on the outside, a lot of automakers screw that up and they overstyle, but in this case, I think Lexus has done a fantastic job making this look distinctive and modern and sharp and cool, and I love the look of this car. And I think it looks better as a convertible than it did as a coupe. I think this is the more beautiful LC, especially with the top down like it is now. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful car, one of the best looking Japanese cars in years. And by the way, I also think it looks good with the top up. I think the contrasting color of the top looks nice, and I think it just generally looks fantastic. It's such a shame that nobody is buying this car because it's gorgeous, and frankly, I love to see them on the street, but I almost never do. And next up, I want to highlight a couple of pieces of particularly interesting exterior design, specifically lighting. Up front, I really like the look of the running lights, very distinctive, very Lexus, but I especially like how the running light housing starts in the regular headlight housing and then kind of goes outside of it and towards the grille. It's a very unusual look and pretty cool. I also like the front turn signal up here, which is vertical. That's not something you see very often or pretty much ever. Again, a very distinctive look for this car. But while the front turn signals are cool, the rear turn signals are especially cool. Check them out. They are also vertical, but they are even more like aggressive and bold and distinctive, and I love how they look. What a neat design back here. I also love the look of the brake lights. They're just clear when they're off. You can see you'd hardly be able to even tell that they're brake lights, but then they go on and they're red. Very different look from basically every other car. Again, adds distinction to the LC. The other cool thing about the rear lighting is how the lights look when you just have the headlights on, so the taillights come on like at night. You can see there's this like 3D Hall of Mirrors kind of effect when you look into the taillights. A very, very cool look, very special. Not too many cars have this, and I love to see it here. The only thing I don't like in terms of lighting is this material on top of the brake lights, this little chrome plastic looking material. It's so cheap and so tacky. I can't believe that someone decided to stick this material on this otherwise so beautifully materialed car. It's really a low point of the exterior when you notice it. And next up, since I'm around back, let's talk trunk in the LC. Pop it open by pressing a little button on the key fob, get it to there, and then you open it the rest of the way, and you can see it is unbelievably tiny. This is a very, very, very small trunk. You can have trouble getting even one set of golf clubs in here, but such is the price you pay for top-down luxury style in the LC Convertible. And finally, we move under the hood where you have the engine, a naturally aspirated 5-liter V8, one of the last NA V8s powering a sports car anywhere, and I suspect this engine won't last too much longer in the days of turbocharging and fuel economy regulations and a lack of demand for the vehicles that this engine has been in, frankly. Now, like I mentioned, this engine makes 470 horsepower, which is a pretty healthy number, and around 400 pound-feet of torque, which is also pretty good. Sends the car from 0 to 60 in the high 4-second range, which is decent. But the very best thing this engine makes is a tremendous exhaust note. Take a listen now. And so those are the quirks and features of the 2021 Lexus LC500 Convertible. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it drives. All right, driving the LC500. My very first impression of this car when I get in is that it is a beautiful car. It is beautiful when you approach it. It attracts an enormous amount of attention, especially for a Lexus. It is beautiful when you're sitting inside it. This interior is gorgeous, fantastic materials, great design styling. Your next impression when you drive it is that it doesn't quite drive as well as it looks. Now, that's not to say it doesn't drive well, because it's fast and it's fun and it's exciting, but it's not that fast. 470 horsepower is not that impressive. 0 to 60 in about 5 seconds. It's good, but for $100,000, I mean, that's kind of par for the course. And it doesn't handle incredibly well, ultimately. It handles reasonably well, but not crazily so. So in terms of performance, you're not getting a 911, you're not getting an F-Type. Well, then you think about, how does it cruise? Isn't that what it's for? It's a Lexus. Well, yeah, but it's a Lexus that sounds, it's obviously not intended to be a cruiser necessarily. And you can tell that when you drive it. It drives well, it's comfortable, but it's not as comfortable as an S-Class coupe or even a Mercedes SL. In my opinion, I think that this car kind of plays this weird in-between thing between 911 and SL, and it doesn't do either of them all that great. With that said, I think there's actually a space in there for a car to exist. Someone who wants a cool, fast, fun car like a 911, but they don't want it to be as rough, or they want something that's relaxing and comfortable like an SL, but they want it to be more exciting, which the SL isn't. And this is that, and I think this would do a great job of filling that hole if the market was demanding cars in this segment anymore, but they just nobody cares. Ultimately, I really love sitting in this car. I love how it looks in here. I love how it sounds. I love the feel of everything, the look of, I mean, this is a really nice car. I think this car's failure is due to no fault of its own. It's a great product, and Lexus clearly took time to make it stand out from everything else. The issue is just that the segment is kind of dead. So who's buying this car? The answer is just not all that many people. But I do kind of wonder about how this car is going to feel in 5, 6, 10 years. Is this going to be a really good used car bargain? I suspect the answer is yes. Demand is not strong in the new market. There are pretty big discounts on these. It's going to be even less strong used. As these start to come down in value, I suspect they're really going to be scooped up. I just wish the infotainment system was the regular Toyota Entune system with a touchscreen that's easy instead of stupid Lexus Remote Touch. Because Remote Touch seems bad now, but in 10, 15 years when this is really a used car, it's going to seem laughably bad. And that's going to be a real demerit for this car going forward. And so that's the 2021 Lexus LC Convertible. I really like this car. I love how it looks on the outside. I love how it looks on the inside. I enjoy the driving experience, and the V8 is fantastic. In fact, everything about this car is great unless you're trying to turn on the heated seats or sit in the back. But the problem is, it just isn't going to sell. The big luxury two-door car is dead. But at least we have a beautiful swan song in the Lexus LC and LC Convertible. And these cars are probably going to be used car bargains in a few years. Anyway, now it's time to give the LC Convertible a DougScore. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the LC is gorgeous, really gorgeous. Not quite the most beautiful car with a slightly fussy design, but it's fantastic, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Acceleration does 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds, and it gets a 7 out of 10. Handling is good, not great, but good for a car like this, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Fun factor is high. This car has a great sound, great acceleration, and the top-down enjoyment only improves things. It gets a 6 out of 10. Cool factor is also high, as these turn heads, mainly because sales have been so slow that they're really rare, and it gets a 6 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 33 out of 50. Next up are the daily categories and features. This car is well equipped, though not quite as feature-filled as some of the newest luxury cars, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Comfort is good, but the ride is a bit harsh, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Quality is tremendous. This is one of the nicest interiors in the business, and we all know Lexus reliability. It gets a 10 out of 10. Practicality is only okay. Yes, it has 4 seats, but only technically, and it gets a 3 out of 10. Finally, value, and it's okay. It's expensive for what it is, but it's also going to be reliable, and resale has been decent. It gets a 6 out of 10 for a total daily score of 33 out of 50. Added up, and the DougScore is 66 out of 100, which is identical to the LC500 Coupe, and just a point behind the new Porsche 911. The 911 has a higher weekend score, of course, but the LC has a higher daily score, and the LC is just more balanced overall. A great cruiser that's also beautiful inside and out and fun to drive. It's just a shame that nobody's buying it.